Is AI going to destroy the craft of writing?
Wow. If you pitch a guy 200-page treatment, that's unacceptable. That's disrespectful. And you can do that within 30 to 60 seconds. You need to write down your ideas and you need to form them into something that I call concept. The first letter C stands for character. O means ordinary world. N is narrative empathy. C is catalyst or the inciting incident. Letter E means extraordinary world. P means pursuit. T is trouble.
If we miss out one of those letters, what kind of an impact does that have? How can we help these action designers, these fight coordinators? What ingredients are required inside of a fight scene so that that scene or sequence is universally impactful and meaningful?
You see a lot of people talking about the neuroscience of storytelling. They're not writers and they don't really get it. And I think a story can be summarized in those words. This, but that, therefore. There's really just a step-by-step process of knowing how stories work. Expand that into a treatment, which you can then sell for real money to a producer or a screenwriter or a director. We're trying to move people emotionally. We're trying to say, come into this theater because we're going to give you an emotional experience you'll never forget. That's what we're selling. That is the product. Story is a way of connecting ideas in a way that propels people forward until they get to the last level of meaning. Every story at its very essence needs to have two things. It needs to have...
Hello, everyone. We have a very special guest today, and that person is going to revolutionize the way that stories are told and written. Peter Walters is a Harvard-educated screenwriter, author, and teacher, specializes in the way that stories interact with your brain. He's taught at the Beijing Film Academy, has taught his How Stories Work seminars to over 30,000 students. His latest film, Unspoken, is a US-China-Canada co-production directed by Da-Ming Chen, and the film stars Michael Cudlitz, which I really love, from The Walking Dead, and Zhang Hanyu, who is a Golden Horse winner for Best Actor, which is essentially the Academy Oscar Award equivalent in China. Make sure to subscribe. It really helps the channel to grow. I guarantee you that by watching this episode to the very end, it's going to change the way that you approach stories, how you pitch your film to others, and come up with ideas. Peter's going to show performers, actors, directors, producers, and writers how to connect everything that they do back to story. I believe that the most powerful tool in film, auditioning, networking, and building a portfolio or showreel is your ability to tell a bloody good story. You've never heard or seen anywhere else what you're about to learn on the art of storytelling. Peter, it's an honor to have you, man. Thank you very much for coming in. How are you doing today?
Thank you so much. I'm doing great. It's good to see you. Thank you. It's very happy to be here right now.
Cool, man. And where are you calling from?
From my house in Taipei, Taiwan.
Beautiful, man. So you're in Taiwan right now. Before we get into everything, how does an American get to Taiwan? I always like to start off by sharing the story or the hero's journey, but the origin is the most important. So what made Peter Walters into the writer he is today, and where did it all begin?
Well, before Taiwan, I was in Beijing for 20 years. That's where we met. And I'd been working in the film industry in Beijing for quite some time, teaching at Beijing Film Academy, just like you said. But it all goes back to my college days. I was a journalism major, actually. And I always knew I wanted to be a writer, some kind of writer. And I was sent by the school newspaper to go and review a play. And that play was called Orphans by an American playwright named Lionel Kessler. And I watched this play with only 3 actors. It's a very minimalistic play, not very much set decoration, but the acting and the story was just so good. It was wild. It was incredible. I was filled with emotion. And the whole theater was on their feet, clapping and cheering for these actors who had put on this play. And I thought, what is happening to me right now? What is this feeling? And how did they do that? And so the very next day, I went to the Office of Academic Advisement. I changed my major from journalism to theater. And I thought, I'm going to learn how stories work. I'm going to dedicate my life to this. I'm going to keep chasing this experience that I just had.
Wow, fantastic. So you could have been a journalist. So writing was always in your blood then, yes?
Yeah. I grew up in a family of musicians and scientists, computer scientists, and I thought I might be a musician. And my first major was music and then journalism and then theater. I changed my major in college too many times.
I think that's really interesting. So you went to a theater show and then something impacted you. I think that in it has a secret. If something that you saw is able to change a man's destiny forever, what was it that caught you about that? Have you ever thought about that?
I'm still thinking about that play, Troy. I think about it all the time. And, people who get addicted to drugs or alcohol, one factor is how powerful it was, how it influenced them the very first time that they tried it. And that wasn't my first experience with story, but it was the most powerful experience I've ever had with story. And I've been chasing that feeling, which is catharsis, which is the feeling that you feel at the end of a story. I've been chasing that and trying to understand how writers create that through their stories and films and plays my whole life.
Amazing. Yeah, when you talk about your first experience, I think about my first experience with you, and I felt something similar just watching you speak at that script writing pitch competition all that time ago where we met.
That was great.
Okay, fascinating. So let's jump into some rapid fire questions that I think the audience will benefit from immediately. Peter, where do stories come from?
Stories come from the Big Bang. Stories are one thing crashing into another thing and somebody there to witness it. Story is one idea hitting another idea and somebody there to observe it and make sense of it. So stories can be as small as a sentence or they can be as large as a complex film. But stories are these large, beautiful products of the human mind and the way that our brain works.
Fascinating. Could you give me an example of a story in a sentence?
Sure. Like every story at its very essence needs to have two things. It needs to have a subject and a predicate. And a subject is usually a noun, like the cat, like my cat is walking around here. And it needs a predicate, which means what are we expressing about that thing? So what are we expressing about my cat? So I could say the cat is black. That's an adjective. And then I have a simple sentence. I have a simple expression. I could say the cat is tired. That's another adjective. I could say the cat is Morpheus. That's his name. So I could link that noun to another noun. I could say the cat is running. That is linking the subject to a predicate verb. Or I could say the cat is a monkey. And when I link that noun to another noun, people are like, wait, what? What do you mean the cat is a monkey? And it opens this question and it demands another sentence. So a simple sentence is closed, but you could end that sentence with something curious or something interesting or some unique twist that demands more of an explanation. So a story pulls us in and we could just close the sentence, or we end that sentence in a way that leads us to the next sentence. And we end that sentence in a way that leads us to the next sentence. And we end chapter 1 in a way that leads us to chapter 2. We end Act 1 in a way that pulls us into Act 2. And so a story is a way of connecting ideas in a way that propels people forward until they get to the last level of meaning, until they get to the final explanation.
So I suppose then a priority for a storyteller or a writer is to continuously create questions or challenges. I suppose we would think about the hero's journey and think about the challenges that he consistently goes through. And then we as the audience, we would think, okay, so how is he going to fix that? Or how is he going to overcome that? But that's
Absolutely.
us thinking that, right? You're talking about internally inside the narrative. There are questions which lead the audience or engage the audience to want to continue to watch the film or read the book.
Yes, eventually that story closes or it invites questions. There's a very common example where someone gives you two facts. The king died. And the second fact is the queen died. And that's not really a story. That's not really connected. But if you say the king died, and then if you add the queen died of grief, there's sort of a causal connection there that one thing caused another. So a story is a chain of cause and effect. You could say the queen died of grief. It invites more inquiry, right? Does that mean she loves the king and she misses him? Or you could say the king died and the queen died of guilt. And that invites more investigation. Did she poison the king? And so a story continues to open up on itself until at some point in the ending, in the third act, it closes and everything's settled.
Yeah, right when you said the word guilt there, you said grief. Grief was okay for me, but when you said the word guilt, something hit me inside my chest. And then I wanted to know why did the queen die of guilt? Yeah, very interesting. Beautiful. I love that. For those listening at home, the word guilt strongly poses a deep question. Okay, so how do I get more story ideas?
I've heard that question a lot from my Beijing Film Academy students and from students around the world. I think there are several ways to get better ideas. I think the most important way to get more story ideas is to study story principles. Study how story concepts are formed. Study how stories work. Because you may come across a person and you think, what a weird person. But if you've studied storytelling, you would think, I can totally use that person as a character in a story that I'm going to write right now. So you collect things from life. You notice things from life. Why? Because you know that it will fit into a good story because you've studied story principles. Another way to get good story ideas is to do something different. If you normally take a taxi, walk. If you normally walk, take a subway. Put yourself in different situations. If you've lived in your city too long, move to a new city. Because every time you go to a new city, everything is just so salient and eye-catching and pops out to you. And then all these ideas from the Big Bang are smashing against each other, and you're there to witness it and make sense of it and then collect it and grab it and put it into your story.
Right. So it sounds like you're saying get out there, live a glorious, well-lived life and extract and absorb from the real world. Yeah? Interesting. Okay. And how do we know if our ideas are good? are they worth chasing and putting on paper?
Sometimes you get a great idea, like what if scientists can bring dinosaurs back from extinction? And maybe you've never heard of Jurassic Park. So maybe you came up with a good idea that somebody else has already come up with. So you need to write down your ideas and you need to form them into something that I call concept, CONCEPT, which is an acronym. You need these 7 elements, CONCEPT. You need to get that together and then let that idea rest. Let that idea germinate and just mature. And you can share that idea with a friend and your friend will say, dude, that's literally Jurassic Park. You think you're the first person who thought of scientists bring dinosaurs back? No, that's happened before. But what you need to do is take your ideas, form them into concepts and create a library of concepts and then test them against some of your trusted friends. And eventually one of those concepts will rise to the top. You're going to have to make a story out of that one.
Great. I love it. So test your stories on your friends and you'll see what sparks inside of them. So how do we turn that spark of an idea into a film outline, a treatment, a script, a novel, or a series? I guess what I'm trying to get at is how do we transform that spark into success in the real world?
Well, it sounds like you're reading the back cover of my new book here called Concept, which is literally about how to take this idea, form it into a concept, expand that into an outline, expand that into a treatment, which you can then sell for real money to a producer or a screenwriter or a director. Or you can take that treatment and you can turn it into a script by yourself. But there's really just a step-by-step process of knowing how stories work and slowly building it. And it's like building any other complex structure, like a building or a car. You just have to know how the pieces work and don't fight against how they're supposed to work and keep going.
Fantastic. And can you give us the acronym and a brief rundown of concept?
Sure. Ideas are everywhere, right? Ideas are sparks, but concept is like the engine. Concepts, the first letter C stands for character. So if you have a great idea for scientists bring dinosaurs back from the dead, it's not enough. It's just an idea. You could forget it tomorrow. But if you write down these 7 things, then you get the beginning of a story. C means character. Who's your character that we're going to follow into the story? O means ordinary world. What is their life like at the beginning? What defines the beginning? N is narrative empathy. And it's different from other kinds of empathy. And narrative empathy is special. It's how we connect with the character. It's not just sympathy, and it's not just we feel that they're somehow special or noble. We connect with them in 4 distinct ways. So N is narrative empathy. C is catalyst, or the inciting incident, or that moment in the beginning of the story that starts the story. Who's the character? What's their ordinary world? Why do we like them? Bam, what happens? That's the catalyst. From there, that story launches into an extraordinary world, or an extraordinary situation, or some kind of new middle. So the letter E means extraordinary world. P means pursuit and purpose. What are they pursuing? What do they want? And purpose. Why do they want that thing? They want to win the race, to win the gold and be the best in the world, or they want to win the race to give the money for their grandmother's operation. And then T is trouble. What sort of trouble, trials, tribulations, traps, treachery will they experience along the way? What conflict, what antagonists are going to stop them? So that's concept. If you have a great idea, your idea is nothing. It's not even copyrightable. But if you form that into a concept according to those 7 elements, now you have something that's copyrightable and that will begin to attract more ideas.
And so this acronym, all of these things you're talking, it's like you just took me on a journey right then, by the way. That was like a tiny little story I felt myself.
It is.
Did you design the concept like that?
I did. Yeah. It's also a subject and a predicate. The first three elements, who is the character, what's their ordinary life and world, and why do we care about them? Those are all about the character. Then we have a disruption. And then the next 3 are all about the structure that they move into. They move into this middle of an extraordinary world in pursuit of something, facing obstacles. So just like a sentence requires these basic components, your story requires these basic components to become the heart of your story, the nucleus of your story, around which all the other electrons swirl.
Let's say we exclude or we miss out or we're not educated yet enough to be able to put all those ingredients into one story. If we miss out one of those letters, what kind of an impact does that have on our story?
I'm so glad that you said that. And I think because sometimes I forget to say things. So I think if anybody watching has any question, if I say something that sparks a question from anybody watching, type that in and I'll be there and I'll be able to answer that. What if you miss one of those characters? What if you forget character? Well, there's no story without a character because character drives plot, character drives structure. What if you don't show the ordinary world? If you don't show the ordinary world, then we don't have a baseline for change. We don't have a baseline for journey. We don't have a baseline for going from this ordinary thing to this extraordinary thing. And if you forget that narrative empathy, the audience doesn't care about your character. They turn it off. They change the channel. They tune out. And if you don't have some sort of catalyst in the beginning that changes things, then the character is not compelled to go on any sort of journey. And if you don't have that extraordinary world where anything can happen, then the character can't unlearn his flaws and learn a new way. And if he's not pursuing something, then the audience doesn't know what the finish line of this movie is supposed to be. They don't know when they're supposed to get excited. And if there's no conflict along the way, then the audience just won't connect emotionally. So all 7 work together.
Okay, I'm going to ask you a naughty question here. In 2 minutes or less, or even 1 minute if you can do it, can you pick one of your favorite films and quickly outline each letter and how that comes across in the film?
I don't like being put on the spot, but let's try. One of my favorite films, if not my most favorite film, is The Matrix. So let's think about how The Matrix begins. It begins with Trinity, but she's not the main character. So at the heart of Matrix, underneath the Matrix, is Neo. Neo is the main character who we're going to latch onto and follow through this story. And in the beginning, he's an IT guy and he's some kind of a hacker. And we connect with him because he feels like he's lost in a dream. He doesn't know what's going on. And he's Keanu Reeves. Who doesn't love Keanu Reeves? Who can't connect with Keanu Reeves? And then the catalyst that happens is Trinity enters his life and goads him with curiosity and anticipation. Do you want to know the truth? Do you want to find out what this is all about? She brings him to Morpheus. Bam, he goes through the mirror into this extraordinary world. Now, the key between the ordinary world and the extraordinary world is contrast. You want to contrast that early everyday life with this new amazing story that we're going into. So now he has to learn to walk again, speak again. He has to learn to fight. He has to learn what the Matrix is. And what are they pursuing? Well, Morpheus and his team are pursuing their long rebellion against the machines. Neo is trying to figure out his purpose in all this, figure out what to do. And what sort of trouble do they face along the way? It's very well spelled out. Agents. Anyone in the system can become an agent. Machines. If you see an agent, run. The trouble and the conflict is very well spelled out.
Yeah, and when you watch The Matrix, or at least when I watched it, not knowing yet about the great expanse of the universe, which then becomes more apparent in 2 and 3, just in the first film alone, I felt that. I felt there was danger. I felt there was trouble. And I felt like there was a lack of security, even as the audience, and you really want Neo to survive and run away and get away from those agents. You're constantly running and constantly on the edge of your seat trying to escape the agent until you get to the very end, and then you rise up and you become the one, and then you can defeat them all. Very interesting. So I think for what really sticks with me is actually the first letter and the last one, for some reason. Character in trouble. Yeah. Peter, can you explain the 3-act structure and why do we still use it today if it's an ancient method of storytelling?
Oh, of course. A 3-act structure is a wonderful structure. It's not the only structure, but it is a very powerful structure and it works. And it has ancient roots, but I would say it wasn't really fully called 3-act structure until the 1800s, when a French playwright named Eugene Scribe formulated a theory of the well-made play that has a beginning, middle, and end. And people went back and looked at Shakespeare and the Greek tragedies and tried to identify, when does the beginning become the middle? When does the middle become the end? How do we know the end is the end? And through through centuries of scrutiny, people have come up with this idea called 3-act structure, which especially in the 20th century, through teachers like Frank Daniel and the guy who ripped him off, Sid Field, who wrote that first book called Screenplay, and Truby and Robert McKee and Blake Snyder, all these people who are studying stories have given us a lot. And 3-act structure, again, is not the only structure, but is a very good structure. And it's all built on one simple idea. And that idea is a logical inference, where you have one thing meets another thing, therefore a third thing. Something in the beginning, something in the middle, something in the end. I have an argument, you have a counter argument, we battle it out, we come up with a new understanding. A meets B, therefore C. It's just as simple as that. And in modern 3-act structure that we talk about today, the beginning is kind of quick, the middle is kind of long, and the ending is about the same length as the beginning. Some people love this structure, some people don't like it, some people say it's not necessary, some people prefer 4-act structure, which is very similar to 3-act structure. Some people prefer 5-act structure, which is very similar to 3-act structure. And some people prefer the 8-step or 8-sequence method, which is very similar to 3-act structure. So all of these extensions, all of these extended structures still come back to this idea of this, but that, therefore. And I think a story can be summarized in those words. This, but that, therefore. Character wants something, so they go into a place to get it, but there's a ninja standing there trying to stop them. Therefore, they have a fight. And then the end of that fight becomes the new this. It's just a repeating pattern or a repeating fractal of this, but that, therefore. You can go all the way down into a scene and you can find this, but that, therefore. You can pull all the way out into 3, 4, 5-act structure and you can see the same pattern. This, but that, therefore. That's all you really need.
Is there something deeper than just cutting a story into these sections and doing this, but that, therefore? Is there some deeper science that's behind the 3-act structure, which we weren't aware of when it was created, but now we've understood it as modern storytellers and researchers? Is there a science beyond the 3-act structure, which helps us to tell better stories?
I think so. Absolutely. You see a lot of people talking about the science of storytelling, the neuroscience of storytelling, and a lot of the people who are writing in that space, they're not writers and they don't really get it and they're only partially true. And some people will call 3-act structure the science of storytelling. Well, 3-act structure is just a modern way to build that inner microstructure. So beneath 3-act structure, 4-act structure, these to me are outer structures. They're outer microstructures. At the end of the day, your film has to take a shape. There will be an opening minute and a closing minute. It will take some sort of a shape. But if you pull away and go all the way down inside the nucleus of the atom, I think you will find a microstructure. And I think that microstructure is this, but that, therefore. And I think every larger structure is built on that. So this is not only a character who wants something, but it's also the thing that gets the attention of the audience. This pulls us in with attention and it makes us interested. But that is, okay, this thing that we like and I'm empathizing with, I identify with it. But now we're going to throw him into this middle of danger and trouble and conflict. What's going to happen? So we wait and we see the therefore. So all the way down at the bottom of all these structures is just the simple pattern of this, but that, therefore.
Beautiful. And when you say that, I feel like that can be applied to anything, long form, short form, being like 10 minutes or even a 1-minute vertical short film or even a 10 or 20 second social media post.
Absolutely.
Beautiful. Okay, let's switch it up. Let's give a lot of filmmakers out there, storytellers, even actors, some really great advice. I know you pitch films all the time to major companies. When pitching your film, what are the best or worst practices?
Great question. A couple of things to know about this. There's some overall tips, and then there's some like practical tips. The overall tip, I think, is just to understand that probably nobody wants your pitch. Nobody wants to hear your pitch. People have heard pitches, too many pitches. They've heard more bad pitches than good pitches. A bad pitch is going to be too long, too boring, a little bit incoherent. And as the person is pitching, they might suddenly say, I forgot to tell you something very important that happened like 10 minutes ago. So that's an example of a bad, unfocused, unstructured pitch. You need to recognize nobody wants to hear your pitch, and they're already feeling bad as you begin to tell your pitch. Unless you're there to pitch, unless you're in their office and they've asked you to pitch. You shouldn't generally be pitching everyone at every networking meeting. But if you do have a chance, a moment to pitch someone, there is a way to do that, and that is through the elements of concept. You just have this great idea for an action film. And if the person says, I don't make action films, then don't pitch them. But if the person says, really, I make action films, what is your story about? And you say, there's this character living this ordinary world, and we empathize him with this. And then this catalyst happens, launching him into an extraordinary world. Once there, he tries to pursue this for the purpose of that, and he faces all of this trouble. It's just concepts. And you can do that within 30 to 60 seconds. And then the person listening will say, I don't like that character, I'm out. Or they might say, this sounds fascinating. Is there a treatment? Say, yes, I have a treatment right here. I've been holding it for you in my back pocket this whole time. Or they might say, is there a script? You say, yes, I have the script right here. I gave it to your assistant already. So there's a way to step by step pitch your stories to the right people. If they don't make actions, don't pitch that. And if they don't like what you've pitched, no big deal. You're done. You can pitch your story to
move on to the next guy. And you mentioned treatment. Could you briefly explain what treatment is for anybody watching that hasn't heard that or doesn't know what that is?
Sure. A treatment is generally between concept and script. you try to figure out the story in a short form. And a treatment can be 2 pages, or it can be 4, 5, or 10, or 20, or 30, or 40 pages. But ideally, you have different kinds of treatments for different kinds of purposes. I think you may want to have a 1-page or a 2-page treatment. You may want to have a 4-page treatment or a 10-page treatment. And when you first write the treatment, just for yourself, you're throwing in a lot of details. Just write it all down. And if your treatment so happens to be 10 pages, that's fine. Try to find the beginning, middle, and end according to the story principles that you've learned. Try and simplify your beginning to its simplest, most exciting elements. Try to simplify your middle to its most exciting and essential elements, and your end. Try and push it down into some succinct, exciting emotional form, which you can then send to people. Because if you pitch a guy at a meeting and he says, I love that pitch, is there a treatment? Yes. And you send him a 200-page treatment, that's unacceptable. That's disrespectful. A treatment should be short. He wants to see that you can tell a story and give him an emotional reaction in a page or 2 or 3 or 4. He doesn't have time to read a 200-page treatment.
I love that. What I took away was your end note. I think you crystallized it beautifully. Through 1 or 2 pages, are you able to elicit an emotional reaction, and can you tell a good story? So short, concise, emotionally impactful will ring out as being able to tell a good story. Is that okay to say?
Yeah. And in the industry, everyone is busy. Everyone has too much to do. And so if you multiply other people's work and demand so much of their attention, that's when they start to maybe avoid your emails and avoid your calls. But if you can funnel their attention, direct their attention, and if you can be one of those people who makes things move forward rather than bogging everyone down, then that'll get noticed.
Yeah, be a leader, not a follower. Be industrial. Push the mission forwards. Don't be micromanaged. Okay, so can you answer one question that I think is really important for every actor out there? Why is story, in my opinion, story is, but would you say that story is the most important thing for an actor? Is that far-fetched for me to say? How do you feel about that?
I agree. I think it's not far-fetched at all. I think everyone involved in a film production knows that story is what connects everything that we're doing. Whether you're the hair and makeup artist, or an actor, or a wardrobe, or the lighting crew, everything is meant to serve a story, right? And actors are a huge part of that. A writer needs to know how to create and build story, but also write words, right? A writer needs to love words and live for words and know how to put words in front of each other. And actors, they need to know how to get in front of a camera and be emotional, express an emotion, do a thing to connect with an audience. But that all fits into the larger framework of what we're trying to do, which is tell a story. We're not trying to, even though there's product placement, even though that's a thing, we're not trying to sell products. We're not, right? We're trying to move people emotionally. We're trying to say, come into this theater because we're going to give you an emotional experience you'll never forget. That's what we're selling. That is the product. That experience is the product. So the more every single person on a film crew understands that we're all serving the needs of that story, the more cohesive and the more successful that story will be.
Serve the needs of a story. Beautiful. Okay, here's another business-related question. Cold introductions at networking events. It doesn't matter if you're a director, writer, producer. Everyone has to face cold introductions at some point. When I meet someone face-to-face, how can I answer the famous tell me about yourself question? Can I use your storytelling science to enhance my answer and make a better impression on, let's say, a casting agent or a director or a producer?
That's interesting. When people are in that position, tell me about yourself, some people get nervous, their heart starts racing, adrenaline floods into their HPA axis, their palms sweat, their breathing becomes rapid. They say the wrong things. That relates to tension in the story. Tension, suspense, the uncomfortable feeling. When what you need to do is you need to go backwards from tension, and you need to focus on the first stage of a story, which is attention and interest. You need to calm down, make your heart stop pumping, and go back to attention and interest. Who are you? And why are you awesome? And why is this person going to remember you? So you've got the person's attention, and now you want to make them interested in you. And at this point of the story, usually that narrative empathy is kicking in. Why will the audience attach to this character? Is it because we pity them, sympathize with them? That's one reason why we may tend to pity or sympathize with a character, but that's not the kind of connection we're looking for in this situation, right? We want that person to think that we're awesome, that we're capable, that we can do what we say, we are who we are, and that hopefully one day, without being needy, that we could be part of their film in some future production. So I've never thought about this before, but in the middle of a story, when we're in tension and suspense and our heart is pumping, I think because I'm answering this question also in the context of having worked with other writers. And maybe actors aren't nervous when they go into a meeting with a producer or they're at a networking function, they meet someone. Maybe actors aren't nervous, but writers tend to be nervous. And so I guess that possibility of being nervous is sort of dominating my answer as I'm more familiar with writers rather than actors.
I think anyone that stands in front of a producer that can change your life is going to be a little bit nervous, whether they say they are or not. So I've certainly felt that before in the past when I've met someone that was a hero for me in the film industry, and then I finally get my shot and I get to talk to them. And I know that I have to keep things concise and short, and I feel like I have to be honest, and I have to let them know who I am and what I'm about. And yeah, I'm just wondering if the neuroscience of storytelling can assist with that so that it gives a stronger impression.
That's it. You have to let them know who you are and what you're about, without going too far. You can't say I was born in Australia, and you can't give too much. You need to, I think maybe you could work a little bit on your story in a way that people will remember you. Like when I first moved to LA, I was the guy who had just come from China when China was immediately having all these box office successes. And so when my managers took me into studios, the producer would come out and say, I thought you said this guy was Chinese, right? Because they said we had this guy who's coming from China, you want to meet him. And anyway, for a period of time, I became known as that writer who's been in China working in the film industry for a while, who is now here in LA. And so you're going to have a little bit of a story, and that's going to make you memorable. People will usually want to ask, who do we know? Who do we know in common? Because that develops a bond, that develops interest, and it develops a bond. Well, you know this guy. Well, I worked with this guy on this project. You know that guy. Oh, yeah, he's like one of my great friends. Well, cool. You're developing trust. Long before you're asking for a job or a position, you're developing trust, and you're developing a sense of network with other people. Funny story. This is the funniest story. I got to tell you, the first time I walked into the office to get my potential agent manager in Los Angeles, I was so excited. I was a little bit nervous. And it was a lawyer friend who had a lawyer friend who knew these guys. And that's how the meeting came about. I walked into the office. I got there early, parked in the parking lot, was sitting in my car for 30 minutes trying to calm myself down. I walk into the office, I sit down, and I look over at the person on the couch sitting next to me, and guess who it was?
No idea.
Have you ever seen Entourage?
Yeah.
Do you know Ari Gould's assistant, Lloyd?
Yeah.
It was Lloyd. So every time I watch Entourage and I think, oh, someday I'm going to get an agent. I'm going to have Ari Gold working for me, and I'm going to be able to go in. I walk in very first time, I sit down on the couch, and it was Lloyd, because he was a client of the company. I'm like, oh, hi. And he goes, hi. And I just had like the Matrix glitched for me in that moment. I was like, am I actually awake right now? It was funny.
Cool. Is he a nice guy?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, good. Great. Peter, we call this channel Movie Martial Arts. Martial arts is a big thing in my life, and it's been the way of life that I've lived for some time. And I came to China. I wanted to be a part of gigantic martial art films. But now I feel like martial art films are dead or dying. What can we do to bring them? Would that be accurate to say? And if they are, what are we doing to bring them back? What can we do to bring martial art films back?
That's sad to hear coming from you. Let me ask you this question before I continue with my answer. But what are some films and some time periods where you feel that martial arts films were at their height or doing well?
Yeah, and the young years of Jet Li and Jackie Chan, of course. These films transcended time and space. They go across the entire planet. We watched them in Chinese with 0 English subtitles. I started to learn Chinese because of these films. So these films were so deep. And I think they motivated many audiences around the world to even become more physically fit and start training. And even actors now, they're wanting to emulate these people. And I think films from that era, they just don't exist today anymore. I don't know if it's because of the spectacle of Marvel films. You have your John Wick films and so on, and they're heavily martial art orientated, of course, but they're just one-off. You know what I mean? Like John Wick is just John Wick. It's one film. Yeah, there's just no more traditional, really great martial art stories coming, even out of China. It's all slowed down. And that's a really sad thing to see. And I'm just wondering, is it because there was a time in history, which is modern history very recently, where martial arts were so strong and it was new and the world didn't know about it yet, but have we become bored of martial arts? Is it that we cannot make great martial art films anymore? For sure, you can make great action films. You can have martial arts within those films, but can martial arts be the central process of that film? I'm not sure it can be done anymore, which is sad.
You know, what's amazing to me right now is you just unlocked a whole memory for me that I haven't thought of in 21 years. But I haven't thought of this ever, and you just unlocked it for me. Is that one reason why I did move to China in the year that I did and the time that I did is I saw this movie, which was announced as presented by Quentin Tarantino. I was like, okay, he's presenting this movie, and it was Zhang Yimou's Hero. I hadn't heard of Zhang Yimou at the time. I didn't know who Michelle Yeoh was at the time, or Zhang Zi. This was 2003, 2004. And I watched this movie and I thought, wow, this is incredible. And I think some people love that movie. Some people don't get it, don't like the ending. But come on, the fighting in that movie is wonderful. There's so much storytelling in how those scenes are done. And I think it's the stunt choreographer Yuan Wuping who's doing that, all the wire work and choreography, who also did The Matrix, if I'm not mistaken. And I think that he knows how to tell a story with his stunt work, doesn't he? He knows how to make us grab our attention, make us interested, make us curious, tease out the tension and the suspense, bring us to the edge of our seats. Is there people out there still doing action in that way? I guess the John Wick team is the new version of that. What do you think?
Yeah, of course. I'm a big fan of them. I love them with all my heart. I have a lot to be thankful for to the director and the crew and the team behind it. I don't know if it's... Yuan Wuping has such a beautiful style. It's my favorite style, actually. It's still a little bit... It's more operatic compared to modern takes on action films. It's operatic, but in that it is operatic, it's so strong and engaging when two people are squaring off. And inside every fight, there is a mini story. There is a this, but that, therefore. And there's just something about it. And I've been on set with him and I've seen him direct camera work.
Amazing.
And when he directs camera work, I'll never forget this. This is one of the most fascinating things which I try to put into my own work. I watch and I observe him and he stands exactly where he wants the camera to be. And he's super character focused.
Wow.
Everything is about the character and how the camera moves and how the camera focuses in on whatever actor is being filmed at that time. One time he just spent 10 minutes just standing there looking, moving his hands forward and backwards, dialing in on the character. Yeah, that's a lot of detail. And I think inside his brain, while that's happening, is he's thinking, how can I better show this character? How can I better tell this story? I think maybe other productions are just working off pre-visualized storyboards, like video storyboards, where they've shot out other actors in place of those actors, and they're just quickly chopping through one shot after the other. But there's such a depth in the man's work, and it's really nice to witness that in person. But he's only one man, and yeah, I really want to see martial arts come back. It's really difficult. It's
eventually, the work that he... Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say, that a martial arts film will hit big because it will transcend audiences and there won't be a requirement to even understand the language. The visual alone will be enough for that movie to spread across the world. I'm
curious to know if Yuan Wuping is involved in the editing process, because sometimes, you do several takes, and on set you do several takes, not only action, but just acting in general. And not every take is the best. And a good editor has a good instinct for knowing which facial expressions, which moments to put together, how long that smile should last, how long that kick should last. And eventually it all becomes constructed in the editing room. I find that some young teams who are doing martial arts will kind of show too much, let the shot linger too much. And if Yuan Wuping is operatic, let's look at, I don't know who the coordinator is, but let's look at a film like Jason Bourne, the first one, how unoperatic it is. It's just brutal and quick and fast, and it's done and it's over. And he grabs the magazine and he rolls it up and he hits him, and then it's over. And there's action philosophy at work there, where you're literally not overextending any shot. In theater, if an actor is mugging the audience, it means he's trying too hard. He's trying too hard to mug the audience or rob the scene or take the spotlight onto himself. And so I think at some point, action stars or actors might mug and the editors might save them in the end.
I think that's really nice. So to confirm, I asked his team, he absolutely sits in the edit room and he manages that process. Yeah. Yeah, very nice. I remember there was an entire film, it's called The Grandmaster. It was actually on hold because he was working on a film called Man of Tai Chi with Keanu Reeves, which is how I met all those guys. And I remember asking Tony, one of his assistants, so what are you guys going to do? Where are you going to go next? And he said, oh, we have to go and edit The Grandmaster. I said, but the film is already shot. You shot that last year. He said, yes, but we're not happy with the edits. We have to go back, and the master, Yuan Wuping, wants to work on those directly. So yeah, they're definitely in the editing room for sure. As a fight choreographer or a coordinator, even a stunt coordinator, if you have a martial art background, you definitely want to have control over the edit, because regular story directors that aren't action focused or background focused, whereby their backgrounds are not full of action and martial arts, they just don't have the understanding of what makes a great fight or what makes great physical conflict. And that a lot to do with that is in camera. It's camera work and it is editing.
I learned a lot from choreography, and when I was working with a producer, and she said, "Do you want to come watch this ballet?" As some of us are going, I was like, "No, I don't want to go watch that." I was thinking that, but I went. My sister did ballet when I was young, and I grew up as a child being forced to go watch her. But anyway, I went to this ballet with a producer and some friends, and I learned so much because there's no dialogue, there's no speaking, there's no talking, but just by actions alone, you know who the protagonist is. You know, all these other people are like giving deference to that person. You know who the antagonist is by physical movement. So I think that actors, choreographers, dancers, they know how to tell a story. They know how to communicate ideas and emotions without words.
Beautiful. All right, changing up the pace once more. We're giving you questions. I wrote a bunch of questions to really kind of challenge the whole sphere of storytelling, and the business side of it is really important to me. What do producers ask writers when they're trying to see if that writer is a perfect fit for the job? How do producers choose and say, I like this writer, I really want to work with him, versus I don't trust this writer entirely, I think we better not work with him? How do they choose that?
Well, speaking from my own experience, producers are first a little bit cautious to get to know you and to read your work and to accept emails. And when I got hired on my first big high-paying job, the producer from LA just happened to be in Beijing, where I was living at the time, 2009, 10, I have to look it up. And he came over, and the producer who introduced me said, all right, you're going to meet the producer for the first time. We may talk about the project. We may not. So I went to his hotel, we met in the lobby, and we never talked about the production. We never talked about the story. We talked about each other. And we just found that we had some common bonds. We had some common, not philosophies, but just ways of thinking. And we had such a good and pleasant time. It was 20 minutes. And I said goodbye, went across the street, got a Starbucks or coffee from somewhere. And then I learned that I got the job just by simply talking to him. I think though we didn't talk about the project, we did talk about what do you like to write? What are your genres? And producers and directors, they always hope that the writer has a specific genre, because stories in the end are advertised and sold and distributed based on certain concepts of genre. And they want the writer to know how to deliver that so that the audience will go in and pay money to see it and give it good ratings. But of course, writers can switch genres. Like, who was it that, so bad with directors' names, but who was it that directed Joker? Was it the same guy who directed Green Book? And is that the same guy who directed Dumb and Dumber or some early comedies? I'm sorry to give you homework. Now you're typing things.
With Joaquin Phoenix?
Yeah.
Todd Phillips.
Did he do The Hangover?
He bloody well did. Yep. Yeah, The Hangover and War Dogs.
So these people expect you to have your genre, and maybe that's what your life is for a while. Maybe your genre for a while is Hangover. But then you have this other side of you that you want to tell as well. Craig Mason is a respected writer in the screenwriting community, and he wrote the TV series Chernobyl and The Last of Us. Well, before that, he did Scary Movie 2 and I don't know, just a couple of I don't want to say throwaway sequels, but they were throwaway sequels. Scary Movie 2. So people can grow.
Yeah, Scary Movie 2 right up to Chernobyl. That's a big difference. What's an early indicator for you that someone is going to be a successful writer versus someone who lacks writing ability?
Commitment to doing it. I think you have to love words. You have to love the idea of putting words in the right order. And you have to love the idea of your words causing an emotional reaction in someone, causing action in someone. And some people have great ideas and they want their ideas to be done, but they don't want to take the time to put it down in words. And even if they put it down in words, they don't fret or stress over how those words might be coming across to someone else. So at the sentence level, there needs to be some sort of dedication. And then at the story level, there needs to be an extra layer of dedication. And then when you have both of those, there needs to be a third level of dedication, which is just keep going. Just keep working. Because you may be great with sentences, you may be great with stories, you may be as good as Shakespeare in those regards. But if you can't handle your emotions or do the work or face the rejection, then I think maybe those are the three things.
Wow, they're great. Can we quickly recap those for the audience?
Yeah. A commitment to words at the sentence level, getting the right words in the right order can change the world, said playwright Tom Stoppard. And moving up from the sentence level, the story structure level, or all the story elements of character and structure and emotion. So becoming good with words, becoming good with story. But above all of that is discipline, self-discipline to keep going.
Discipline. I love that. Totally right in there with the Marshall Way. Discipline is king. Peter, whenever I come to your seminars, your workshops, whenever I have the joy of learning from you, there's something that I always remember you told me when we first met and discussed what it is to get a film made. You said something, I don't know why, this is the one thing that stuck with me. You said that films go through such a challenge and difficulty to get made. Why do you think that stuck with me? And why did you tell me that?
I remember that. And in fact, I remember the moment that I first heard that when I was in college myself. I heard that from a director, and he said, even if it's scary story, scary movie part 2, which I just made fun of, which I shouldn't have done, every single movie that gets made is a miracle. So Scary Story Part 2 is a miracle. When you think about everything that has to go into making that movie get to a theater, it's just a straight up miracle. All those names that you see at the end and every part that they fulfilled, the lighting crew, the camera crew, the actors, the directors, the writer who first got that idea maybe 3-5 years ago, every single step before Scary Movie Part 2 came out had to happen in the way that it happened, resulting in the miracle that is Scary Movie Part 2. Whether
Fantastic.
It's a 48-hour film or even a student short film of 5 minutes, that is also a little miracle. You made it happen. It wouldn't have happened without all these people working together.
It is indeed a miracle, yeah, for everyone, all the creatives to come together and then actually make a final product. Very difficult. I see people pitching their films online all the time, whether it's through short stories or people posting on Facebook short treatments or outlines. I have friends tell me all the time, Troy, I have this great idea for a short film or a script or a feature-length film. And they start to tell me the idea, but I don't really feel like the story has sustenance or it can be bought or sold. I don't think someone would actually sit down and say, I really want to watch that. What can we do concept-wise to ensure that that world that we are pitching or that story that we're pitching looks valuable?
Right. Their concept, their pitch might have been awesome, but it just might not have been for you. And that happens, right? Sometimes somebody does have a great idea, like J.K. Rowling for Harry Potter, and she gets rejected 12 or 40 times in a row until somebody does see the value of it. There is a way to make people see the value of it. And if it's your first idea and your first concept and you're pitching it for the first time to the first person, maybe it doesn't sound so exciting. Maybe you haven't really thought it through. But going back to what we talked about at the beginning, take your idea and form it into a concept, and then develop a library of concepts. Write it down. Write all of your concepts down and let them compete with each other in your mind and as you share them with your friends until one of those ideas rises up to the top. Because at the end of the day, your finished product has to compete with everybody else's finished product that's also existing in the world. Maybe you'll go on to win an Oscar or even just be nominated for an Oscar. If you're nominated for an Oscar, that's almost as good as winning. Because if your movie had come out 1 year previous or 1 year later, who knows? You might have beat all of the other films that you so happen to be in competition with. So that all comes back to, if you want your film to compete in the market space with other people's stories and ideas, go all the way back to your own personal drawing board and develop not just one, but multiple concepts and work on them until one rises up, and then you work on those with your friends. And if you're pitching it on Facebook or YouTube with your mouth, or if you're pitching it with words, I would say make sure that you're following my concept outline. Who's the character? What's his ordinary world? Why do we connect with this character? What catalyst pushes them into an extraordinary world? What are they trying to get? What's going to stop them? If you pitch in that way, the listener is always being pulled forward. It's like one sentence leading to the next, leading to the next. The person just has to keep going with your story. They want to know more. You want to pitch your concepts in a way that makes people lean in and ask for more.
I think you mentioned concept earlier on, just as the podcast began. Are we able to go a little bit deeper into concept? Can you have your book there. Can we take a look at your book one more time? Can you show that to the camera?
I can show you a mock-up of the book. This is, the book is available for pre-order, and you'll be able to get it from through Amazon as a Kindle or a paperback on October 1st. But yeah, we can and we should go into what this book is all about, why I wrote it, and what concept means and how to go from your idea to a product.
Tell me how this book can improve my storytelling and have me writing better stories today.
I've taught a lot of seminars. I just saw you in Beijing. I just did a little tour through a few cities in China. And in my seminar, you know me, I can get up and I can speak about story for 8 hours straight. Unfortunately, my students have to go to the bathroom and have to eat lunch. But you know what my least favorite part is about my storytelling seminars? It's the breaks. Every time we take a 10-minute break, I want everyone to come back in 5 minutes so that we can get started again. That's how much I love talking about story. I just can't stop myself. And in those seminars, I think everything that I want to say about storytelling, I can do within 4 subjects: concept, character, structure, and emotion. I have a lot of great tips for character, a lot of great tips for structure, a lot of great tips for creating an emotional reaction in the audience. And my seminars tend to highly focus on those 3. Tend to forget the first one. I tend to forget that opening section on concept. How do you get ideas? How do you get better ideas? How do you get more ideas? How do you form them into a concept? How do you go from concept through a process that I call ideation, where you just generate tons of ideas through this process of ideation? Then you start to organize and shape them into a treatment. In my seminars, most people have some experience with writing already that I tend to skip over some of that early work. But this book is to fill in that gap. All those things that I don't feel like I should spend so much time speaking in a seminar with my mouth, putting them all into a book right here.
Okay, great. So I've attended some seminars before, and what stuck with me a lot was we spoke a lot about character. What value do you think I could get from this book personally?
Character book or the concept book?
The concept book.
I think it's for people, like, I'll never forget the day that I printed my first screenplay. I'll never forget the day that I printed my first full-length screenplay. It was August 1st, 2007 in Beijing. I had written a full-length stage play and other short things, but I'd been working for 3 years. I'd literally been working for 3 years on this very special script, a lot of research based on a true story. And as soon as I had it all finished, when I printed it out, I put some binding on it, went to a cafe to sit down and start doing a line edit. And just the feeling that I had holding the pages in my hands, my hand and the pages, it formed some sort of a circuit. It felt like a warm hug. I did it. I went from the beginning of my idea through this huge process that resulted in the script that I could print out. I could roll it up. I could find a stranger and hit him over the head with it and say, how's that for an emotional reaction? I had something with weight. You want to know something bizarre? Is that coffee shop I went in to start editing, Daming was sitting there. Daming, the director of the last film that I wrote, Unspoken. Chen Daming was sitting there. This was 2007. And I said, look what I did. I printed my first script. He said, your first script is special, man. It's special. And years later, we would go on to work together. So there's that whole process of how do you get an idea to how do you print out your full-length script and you're holding it in your hand and a director says, that's special. And one day you work with each other. What's that magical gap between idea and first process, a first finished script? And that's what I'm trying to give people with this book concept.
Wow, that's beautiful. I had no idea that that's how you met Daming all that time ago. That's amazing. We're going to have to circle back around. Peter, can we switch it up again and go into fight choreography a little bit? Because I think that's interesting. And there's an entire world of action out there. It's a whole subsystem. It's an entire industry, just the action section of Hollywood. So what ingredients are required? How can we help these action designers, these fight coordinators? What ingredients are required inside of a fight scene so that that scene or sequence is universally impactful and meaningful?
This is more your specialty than mine, but I can approach this from a writer's perspective. I can approach this from a perspective of how I think words or acting or choreography interacts with the human mind. I think there's 5 stages in a good story that I can teach people just by, if you put your hand up, if you put your left hand up, I can point out 5 things. To your pinky on the left, that's basically the beginning. And your thumb on the other side, that is the end. So you have your beginning and your end. And your 3 fingers in the middle are going to be the middle. The middle is longer and it has its own stages. So we have beginning, 3 middles, and 1 end. Beginning, 3 middles, and 1 end. And I think just that should be able to help stunt choreographers, actors, writers to do better in their scenes. So the beginning is defined by attention and interest. How are you going to grab the attention of the reader or grab the attention of the viewer? How are you going to grab attention? There are ways to do that. Sound and noise and newness. There are certain techniques that I have identified and written down. I gave them to you at my story seminar. And then the middle has 3 parts. And the first part of the middle is curiosity and anticipation. Now that you've got the audience's attention, how do you make them curious about what might happen? And it's a stage that people often forget. And I think that in fight choreography, maybe people forget this stage. So grab attention and interest. Some people jump straight to the middle of the middle, but don't forget the first part of the middle, which is create some curiosity and make the audience anticipate what's going to happen, because we need to frame the middle. We frame the middle by starting with curiosity and anticipation, and then we move into the middle stage, which is tension and suspense. And there are ways to write, act, or fight in a way that create tension and suspense. Then the end of the middle, we stretch it out with a third technique called distension and desperation, where the audience is hoping for something to happen, but actually the worst possible thing is happening. And then they feel like, oh no, my character lost. This moment is over. Neo died, or Agent Smith won. We need to stretch it out to that point and make the audience really believe that the worst has happened. And then the last thing that we do is we deliver catharsis and resolution. So these are the emotions. This is the emotional pattern of a good story or a good scene. I call it the essential story fractal. But we just move from one stage to the next, and they all combine. These stages all combine. We grab attention and make people interested. We raise curiosity and make people anticipate. We throw the characters and therefore the heart of the audience into a scene of tension. We elevate that scene of tension to the point of suspense by making it more deadly or more dangerous. Then we stretch it out. Don't forget to stretch out the middle through techniques called distension, where you keep going and you keep going and you keep going. And you stretch it out to the point of desperation where the audience thinks, oh, what does this mean? Is Neo dead? Did we lose? Is it over? And in that moment of loss, then you come back again with the ending and you deliver the emotion of catharsis, which is what I felt so long ago in that theater. You deliver the emotions of catharsis and you resolve the story. So this pattern that makes for a good scene and makes for a good story and interacts with the brain in a very specific way, I think we should inject this pattern into fight scenes as well. And I think that if you and I looked at a fight scene that you love, I could identify each of these steps from beginning to end.
You just mentioned the essential story fractal. Can we go a little bit deeper into the essential story fractal? Because you've spoken about this before at your seminars, but I know it's really important, and this is a big basis of what you teach. Can we touch on the essential story fractal and how that can help people?
Sure. The essential story fractal can be expressed in 3 words or 5. At its basic, it's this, but that, therefore. This, but that, therefore. And with the 5 hands, the pinky is this. The middle 3 fingers is but that, but all of that. And then the ending is therefore. So it's the same this, but that, therefore, with the beginning, middle, and end. But the middle also has a beginning, middle, and end. So it's beginning, middle, and end, but the middle also has a beginning, middle, and end. And the reason why is because of how time works. We are beings who exist in space-time, and time needs to happen over several seconds. And so there's a moment where the beginning turns into the middle. There's a moment where the middle turns into the end. And so by going from 3 to 5, what I'm basically doing is this is the beginning, and then this is the beginning of the middle, this is the middle of the middle, the end of the middle, and the end. That's it. We have the beginning of the middle, the end of the middle, and then the end. It's because that all happens. It has to happen in time. Not everything can happen at once. And so one thing that is totally missing from amateur scripts and maybe from amateur fight choreography is time. You have to slow down. You have to give the audience time to emotionally respond and emotionally invest in what's happening. So in the beginning, we grab attention, but we also create interest for a character. And then you don't just launch them into tension, you frame it, you preface it with some curiosity and some anticipation. He needs to go and face Agent Smith. What's going to happen? As soon as you're asking the question, what's going to happen? What does that mean? That means we're in anticipation. So he launches into a fight with Agent Smith, and we're in full tension. Tension means this force versus this force, one versus another, battling it out. And as that tension becomes more dangerous and deadly, it starts to push into the territory of suspense. And by this point, the audience is like, come on, Neo, just win. I can't take it anymore. I can't take it. Somebody needs to win. And the more that fight continues, that's when we enter into the 4th stage called distension. Distension means stretching something out, prolonging something. If the blood in your body or your bladder distends, it becomes uncomfortable, painful, and you want it to be released, right? So you come to this point of desperation, and the word catharsis at the end, when we deliver that catharsis, and the brain has a rush of endorphins and a rush of serotonin, the word catharsis means release. And so if we want to deliver release at the end, then we have to follow this pattern here. We have to bring people in, grab their attention, make them interested, make them curious about what's going to happen, make them anticipate, throw them into a scene of tension, escalate it to suspense, stretch it out, make the audience squirm, sit on the edge of their seat, and then when they think all is lost, pow, hit them with that catharsis at the end. This is how we write a good scene. This is how we choreograph a good fight scene. This is how we structure a good story.
Amazing. So we just went over the essential story fractal in its essence, yes? But I suppose it's a lot deeper than just that.
Yeah, it can be deeper. At its heart, there's this one little pattern, and we can slice it up and chop it up. We can do what's called thin slicing, and we can examine it at closer and closer levels to see what techniques are being employed to make the audience or viewer feel exactly what they're feeling in the brain.
Man, I think that is so valuable. I think everything that you just went over can actually be applied immediately by anybody watching this. I hope that everyone who's watching this is taking down notes. One thing I wanted to ask you, Peter, was just before when we were going through how to utilize that to tell a really great fight. Do you think perhaps it's too much to ask you, but would we be able to prepare a document that we can put down in the comments and people can have something to take away, whereby if they want to design their own little action sequence or action story, they can take that away with them? And I think that's
That's such a good idea. That's a great idea. Let's do it. Let's make a little PDF. And I have in the back of my mind to create a poster that you can hang on your wall where this, but that, therefore breaks down into these 5 stages, which breaks down into these 10 stages. And you can just you can know what you should do next in your story.
That's so cool. If you could sell that poster with your book, I think you would do really well. I want that poster. Maybe I'm going to design that poster, run it by you, and put it up on my wall. Yeah, if we could create something for the viewer to take away so that they could very quickly tap into that. Let's say they're designing a short fight sequence or an action sequence. Boom, they can utilize Peter Walters' principles and enhance their fight sequence for film or story. I think that would be really, really valuable. So let's work on that.
By our premiere. Let's have it ready. By the time people are watching this, it'll be ready.
Rock and roll. There you go, everyone. Peter, I want to switch it up again. I have a little surprise for you to really prove how you can enhance and improve a pitch really quickly. I'm going to give you a 30 to 60 second pitch, really bad idea, maybe not too bad, maybe it's great. I'm going to try to make it as bland and average as possible. Then I want you to tear it up, reshape it, and turn it into the perfect pitch so that it's ready to present to someone at an event or a meeting. Okay. Is that okay?
Is it called Scary Movie 7?
No, it's not Scary Movie 7.
Oh, okay.
Maybe not that good. Okay. All right. Enough joking about scary movies. We're going to get in trouble. Okay. So here's my pitch. So I'll give you something really short, and then the idea is you make it into gold. All right. The character is a kid. A stone is found in his backyard. A portal appears. Some creature comes through the portal and says this stone is ultra important. Years go by. The child holds on to the stone. He loves his father very much. It is revealed that the moon is dying.
Yes.
We think that the moon is just a rock. But the moon is about to eventually die. And this is really important because of gravitational force. And if the moon is gone, then the Earth is in trouble as well. The kid is tasked to go on this mission to save the moon. And he's given extraordinary powers, let's say the powers of the moon. Then it is revealed that the reason that the moon is dying all along is because his father cracked it intentionally. And his father wants to destroy the moon for personal reasons that we do not know yet. Then by the end of the film, it is discovered, in the middle of the film, it is discovered that the child realizes to save the moon, he has to kill the one person he loves. Okay, take my trashy idea and turn it into gold.
Sounds good. You've given me lots of elements that we can now shape into a great concept. Before I do that, I just want to let you know that my device here is sitting on a book called Seven Eves by Neil Stephenson. Are you familiar with it?
No, I'm not.
It's a sci-fi movie about the moon cracking into 7 pieces and what happens gravitationally on Earth and over the next several generations. And that's all I'm going to say. So this idea is in conversation with that Neil Stephenson book, and many ideas that we get are going to be in conversation with other books. This story sounds like it's in conversation with any story that has a father-son dynamic, right? So what I wrote down as you spoke was a kid finds a stone, a portal opens, and a creature tells him that the stone is important. And then many years go by. And then I wrote down father. And then you said the boy is tasked and given special powers to save the moon, but his father is trying to crack the moon, and we don't know why. Did I get that down correct?
Yep.
Okay, so the first thing that we need to do is we need to figure out from this basic idea. This idea is already most of a concept. It's already most of a concept. So in the book, we would learn that we have to figure out who this kid is, what his name is, what his age is, what his personality and temperament is like, what his strengths and flaws are like. Does anything come to mind? Does anything come to your mind regarding this kid? What do we know about him?
Let's call him a Captain America kind of kid, where he's the maybe not so brave and rambunctious as the young skinny Steve Rogers is.
That's a good
maybe
type.
Just
I
make
can
him,
see it.
Yeah, I want to make him more of an everyday guy, but with a big heart. So yeah, I guess.
So he has a big heart
Rogers.
and noble ideas, but the muscles aren't there, at least not yet.
Yeah.
Skinny Steve Rogers really connects. And then we need to know something of his, before we get into him discovering the stone. That's too far. In the concept method, we need the character, then their everyday life, their ordinary world, and then a reason to connect with this kid. And I'm guessing that as soon as we get to CON, which is narrative empathy, it may have something to do with his father. So before, we can't just go kid to portal. We have to spend some time setting up this character. Who is the character? What's his ordinary world at the beginning? What's the narrative empathy that bonds him with us? What bonds the character to the audience? What's his ordinary life? Where is he living? How old is he?
Everyday school kid, single parent. His father really loves him more than anything.
So it's the single parent is the father. And what do we know about the mother?
Mother is passed away some time ago.
Okay, so you're already giving me a picture of this kid in his everyday life. And already I'm starting to bond and attach to this kid because he has a mother who's already died and his father is devoted to him, but maybe is busy at work, I'm guessing.
Yeah, he goes away. He's a scientist. He goes away. We don't know why he's going away so often, but it's apparent that he really loves his child and he's trying his best to provide for them.
Let me ask you a question. Does the mother have anything to do with the moon or the creature or the stone?
Didn't get that far, but if I had to choose, I would say she has something to do with the creature, yes.
Okay, something to do with the creature. Is there some sort of battle happening, some sort of cosmic battle happening between this boy's mom and dad over the fate of the moon?
That would be, that is ideally how the Hollywood story generally goes and works out, isn't it?
It doesn't have to go that way. It's just a question that I want to handle because people might wonder about the mom. People might anticipate in the wrong direction. I'd want to close ideas that don't appeal to you.
Yeah, I suppose the way that we would do it to try to... See, the norm really doesn't appeal to me. I know the way that it should go for mainstream is to surprise everyone at the end, and the loving father turns out to be the bad guy that the hero has to take down, and the mother perhaps seemed not like the good person, and actually it's revealed that she really is the good person, and she was the one that really loved her son all along, and that's bittersweet. I know that's the way it should go, but I don't want to go down that road. I don't know why.
You don't have to. There's some stories and some concepts and some pitches where they really rely on tricking the audience. Like at the end of Shawshank Redemption, we realize he's been digging a hole forever. But you can't expose that idea early. And with a movie like The Sixth Sense, where a shocking reveal happens at the very end that makes us reframe everything that we've seen already. There are some stories that just have that sort of shock revelation built into them that make it difficult for us to fully capture the concept at the beginning. And so if this story has any shocking reveals like that, I needed to kind of sniff that out and see if that was going on.
Maybe I would make the alien the mother.
And so is it a creature? Is it a creature or is it like a holograph or a bright light or something?
We could call it a shapeshifter from maybe the moon. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, shapeshifter from the moon.
Colony of shape-shifting moms on the back of the moon.
Yeah, and that's why the child has special powers, because when the rock is found, it awakens this ancient DNA, whatever have you, that can allow him.
The next question I have is, you said after the portal and the rock, years go by. And normally, between the character setup and the catalyst and entry into the new world, we don't typically have years go by. How many years pass between Luke Skywalker gets R2 and C-3PO and Luke Skywalker's aunt and uncle are killed? How many years go by? Answer, not even a year, not even a week, maybe a day.
Right.
So all those elements happen quite quick. It doesn't really happen that you have someone have a childhood experience and then years go by. If you do that, then that means we might need to have a second catalyst, a second event that breaks the story again. If years go by, then that's not a strong enough catalyst, because a catalyst needs to be responded to now. The inciting incident needs to be dealt with now. So I would want to shape your concept in that direction.
Yeah, cool, man. Fantastic. All right. So could you give me my pitch back to me, but with your Peter Walters concept golden sauce all over it for the audience?
Yes. Let me explain how I would devise this. I would figure out who this kid is, what his ordinary life looks like in the beginning, what his strengths and flaws are. And then I would make the listener or the audience really connect with him, really bond with him. His mom is missing and his dad is this or that. Maybe there's some bullying at school. Maybe he shows some promise in this or that way. Maybe he's bullied. Maybe he beats up a bully. Maybe we admire him because he beats up a bully. But I really need to figure out those three elements at the beginning: character, ordinary world, narrative empathy. And then what comes next is the catalyst. I think that's the portal. The portal, and he's given this gift and has no idea what it is. And that portal needs to lead soon into the journey that he takes into an extraordinary world, where his pursuit and purpose for doing that becomes very clear. And what is the trouble that is going to try and stop him? What is the conflict or obstacles? Maybe his father, right, that are going to stop him. So maybe if the father is connected to the T concept, the father needs to be connected also to the ordinary.
Okay, final question, because we have to wrap things up. This is something that is causing everyone a lot of grief all over the creative world. Is AI going to destroy the craft of writing, and should we be worried?
Wow. So when first of all, I'm only familiar with ChatGPT. I know there's other things. I just haven't dabbled with them yet. But as I started doing my master's degree in creative writing and literature, we were forbidden to use AI. And ChatGPT was just coming out. And I took that very seriously. I took it extremely seriously. I was learning to write novels, and I was learning from all these teachers, and I was not looking at AI. But all my friends were writing to me saying, wow, AI can write your whole story for you. Look what AI wrote for me. I was like, I'm not going to look at this right now. And they're like, you don't understand. AI can help you develop your concept. You can program AI with my 7 elements of concept, and it will give you ideas. Then you can choose one, right? You can choose one. You can say, I like this one. I don't like this one. I like this one. I love it so much. I'm going to expand it. I'm going to make it my own. I'll tell you what I think AI can't do yet. AI doesn't know why is Stephen King so popular? Why is he such a well-read writer? It's not because people sometimes criticize the way Stephen King's books end. They sometimes think that his endings are not fulfilling. So if you ask ChatGPT to improve the ending, maybe it could probably do that. But if you ask ChatGPT to write 500 in a voice that readers want to spend time with, I don't think ChatGPT can do that yet. Stephen King has a way of writing that it allows us to take our everyday life, our conscious, subjective experience, and transport it and teleport it into the life of someone else. And we're experiencing life through someone else. Stephen King can put us into an imaginary human, and we feel like we're some other living, breathing character. I have never seen ChatGPT write like that. The best writers can just transport us into a world, a time, a place, a character. We feel like we're living in that world as that character. The narrative empathy is so strong. We are essentially that character. When that character goes through an emotion, we go through that emotion. I've never seen an AI write like that. An AI can suggest story components, but when an AI tries to write, I'm sorry, there's just nothing there. It just feels like an instruction manual, or like the worst collection of cliches that it has ever accumulated online. Now, if somebody else has been deeply moved by a story that AI wrote, please contact me. I would like to know what AI wrote and how that influenced you, but I haven't seen it yet. Not to say that it's not going to come out and be able to do that tomorrow, but I haven't seen it yet.
Okay, cool. So safe for now. I guess keep working on the craft and try to make it as compelling and impactful as possible. Lead the way. Try to lead AI. Yeah, it's going to be very interesting how it goes down. Peter, we've gone well past time today. Before we get to the end, of course, I want to say thank you so much. I think there's so much wealth of knowledge inside this conversation. There's too much. People are going to have to watch it over and over again. I always like to end these conversations with the guest's advice. So what's the one thing that you would advise when it comes to storytelling and writing a film?
I have this secret. Do you remember my 10,000 British pound rule that I used to tell? My secret advice, my 10,000 British pound rule is, you know that in the end of your story, the climax is going to be amazing, right? And it's going to deliver catharsis and Neo's going to win and everyone's going to love the moment that Neo defeats Agent Smith. You know that that's going to be awesome. The problem is to get people there. And to get people from the first minute to the last minute, you have to employ something. You have to do something very intentionally. And that is every step along the way, every scene, every beat, every moment. It must be sold, completely sold to the audience, beat by beat, as though it's the most important thing happening in the entire world at that moment. So when we open on Trinity, that is the most important and amazing thing in the entire world that we've ever seen. And then when we open on Neo, that needs to be the most amazing thing that we've ever seen. And when we follow him into the club and he meets Trinity and we see these two lines connecting and we see him at his office and then the agents come for him and then he receives a phone and a voice is telling him to turn left, turn right. Then he's at the edge of the window. Every single moment has been sold to us as though it's the most amazing thing in the entire world in that moment, even though the directors know that something amazing is going to happen. When Neo defeats Agent Smith, they put their whole heart on every single moment that leads up to that. So sell every beat, moment by moment, as though it's the most important thing in the entire world at that moment, even though you know more important things are coming later.
I love that. That's incredible. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you.
It's even better than when I first heard you say it. For everyone listening inside our community, the Movie Martial Arts online platform, we have a very special section where Peter himself will share with our premium students his industry secrets, tips and blueprints that are reserved only for our private community. There you will also have direct access and the ability to reach out to the master, Peter Walters, as a movie martial arts student, and that is an invaluable resource. We call this section of our platform the Hollywood Vault, and every guest on the podcast is given the opportunity to partake in it. It is not mandatory. Peter will be creating something valuable for you all that will get you writing better content and stories immediately. So thank you very much for that, Peter. Peter has something very special to announce, which if you are a long-term student of Peter's from all over the world, wherever you are listening in today, or if you have just stumbled upon the master himself, Peter, I believe you have a surprise. We've hinted at it already today a couple times. What are you releasing soon?
October 1st, my first book, How Stories Work, Concept and Story Ideation. It'll be available it's available now. This is the world announcement, right? When this podcast releases, that is the official world announcement that the book can now be pre-ordered and it will be yours on October 1st in Kindle or paperback for now. And if you're in China and you don't do Amazon, I will make paperback versions available on the mainland at some point very soon.
Strongly urge everyone to check out the book ASAP. I've enjoyed a sneak peek and I can say absolutely without a doubt my storytelling already is improving just from that sneak peek. We're going to drop the link in the description below so it's easy for you guys to get to. The power that Peter will put in your hands is limitless. There is no price that you can put on knowledge, and this book, I believe, will change your life because the knowledge that Peter has given me from his multitude of seminars and lessons in the past, even today, this podcast, I'm just learning all the time. So that's what you're going to get when you pick up this book. I guarantee it. Make sure you check it out. For listeners who want to follow you or learn more about you, where can they go? Where can they find out more?
I guess the best place is my website, which is simply howstorieswork.com.
Cool. Okay, howstorieswork.com. We're going to drop that in the description below so people can link up with you. As always, subscribe to our newsletter below as well to not miss a thing. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Please hit the bell notification. Give us a like if you learned something today. Please share it with others to help push your mission forwards and ours as well. If you have questions for Peter, remember, do drop them in the comments below. He and I would love to see what more we can help you with in the future. Today, you have witnessed something which I believe is the ability to change the world. Peter, you always say this beautiful one sentence. When words are written or spoken at particular times under particular circumstances in the face of certain events, they end up changing the world. For me, that is the value and the wealth that Peter Walters as a creator and mentor has given to me. Peter, I'm so very grateful, sir. Thank you for everything that you've ever done for me. Thank you for on behalf of everyone that is watching this right now or listens to this podcast. You never stop giving. Everything that you are, God bless you, man. Thank you, and thank you for helping me tell better stories.
Absolutely, Troy. Thank you so much.
And good luck with the book, brother. I hope I'm the first person to make the purchase.
I hope you are. Thank you.
We'll see you in the next one. Hey, thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe to Movie Martial Arts. Great action films are born from great storytelling. Click on the video over here. Peter will break down how fight scenes work, including all the story elements most creators miss. Peter will guide you how to make your fights cinematic. Plus, you get a free PDF to help you craft your own scenes like a pro. So stay cool, and I'll see you in the next one.